Excuse me. Are you telling me that the safety and well-being of families and individuals who are in these multifamily housing units is, as he stated in this order, are, quote, no longer consistent with the Federal Housing Finance Agency's priorities and objectives? I'm Antwann Michael, and this is The Breakdown. All right, folks, there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. this week. The present administration in the White House is wasting no time in trying to get those issues that are important to them swung in their direction. And do not get me wrong, this signal debacle is important. We should be talking about it. We should unpack it. We should critique it, all of the things. However, what is going on over at the FHFA, that is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, is just as important and should be highlighted because it will come to impact a lot of people. If you have not already, please make sure that you go and watch my most recent episode of my mini podcast, The Breakdown, that is titled Important Directives Coming Out of the FHFA, whose director is Bill Pulte, who was, of course, appointed by Donald Trump. And Bill Pulte has been on a roll over the past 24 to 48 hours and rolling out order after order after order that will impact Fannie Mae as well as Freddie Mac. One of those orders is that programs that have to deal with down payment assistance and helping with closing costs with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac properties and transactions are now canceled. They are no longer a thing. So those down payment assistance programs and closing cost programs, they no longer exist. Make sure you go back and watch the first podcast, the most recent podcast, or I should say, to catch all of that. That stated, Bill Pulte has just released another order. Like just now, fresh off the presses, March 26, 2025. And the title of that order is Order Issuing a Directive Closing Directive Standardization of Enterprise Radon Policies Decisions. What Bill Pulte has now decided is that the additional policies that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac has put into place to protect individuals from radon in their homes are no longer needed for FHFA properties and agencies and institutions that fall under the FHFA. For those of you all who do not know, radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that is in the ground. And so the reason why that's important is when you have new construction, whether it be a home, commercial building, etc., you want to test for radon, number one, because it does not have a color, it does not have an odor, and it can seep into the structure, and prolonged exposure to radon has been linked to lung cancer. And here we have the director of the FHFA saying, yeah, let's go ahead and cancel out those additional policies that put in some additional steps to make sure that radon is not present. More specifically, reading from the order itself, it says, on November 3rd, 2022, the Federal Housing Finance Agency issued a revised directive requiring the enterprises, by the way, is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, requiring the enterprise to adopt and implement additional changes to their radon policies for multifamily properties as described in a 2022 radon policy that was attached to the revised directive standardization of enterprise radon policies decisions. And he quotes the decision number there, right? So he's saying that in 2022, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they put some additional things on the books, but those additional things we're no longer going to do. We're wiping those out as of March 26, 2025. Now, why is he wiping them out? This is a quote directly from the order. He says, quote, whereas the aligned 2022 radon policy requirements add time, expense, and operational complexity to the enterprise transactions, to the transactions of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the requirements are no longer consistent with the Federal Housing Finance Agency's priorities and objectives as the conservator. Excuse me. Are you telling me that the safety and well-being of families and individuals who are in these multifamily housing units is, as he stated in this order, are, quote, no longer consistent with the Federal Housing Finance Agency's priorities and objectives? that folks who, paid their rent or their mortgage in these properties, who will entertain in these properties, who will raise their families in these houses, who will cook in these houses, who will sleep in these homes, all of the things that we all do in the comfort of our homes, that their homes are potentially traps now because you don't want to keep the additional steps on because it causes too much money to do so. Truly, the saying is real. Elections have consequences. And this is one of those consequences. And what I will let you do is look up the populations who primarily live in multifamily housing that is provided by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac under the FHFA umbrella and who that impacts. Because we know if this impacted a certain populace, those persons would have all of the steps needed to ensure that radon was not there. There's a reason why these policies needed to be revised, why Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac said, hey, there is something on the books, but we now need to take additional steps to make sure that radon is not present. And here is Bill Pulte saying, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. Now, why might this be important? I talked about this toward the end of the previous most recent mini podcast of the breakdown. Bill Pulte is of the Pulte Group. They do housing, construction, and real estate development all across the United States. They are one of the largest corporations to do so. And they are able to participate in the FHFA process, right? And so doing the radon testing and all of that means additional expenses for them. In other words, Bill Pulte's hands is directly on the policies that impacts the bottom line dollar of a corporation that he is closely connected to because it is his family. And toward this end, again, we have to talk about this rearticulation of the neoliberal state that is happening right now. And again, neoliberal meaning in a very broad swath, right? Because there's a lot to it, but effectively keeping costs down as much as possible, keeping government down as much as possible, while enlarging the bottom line at all costs. And in this instance, the safety of families in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac housing. This is very, very serious. And when you understand the populations that live in the multifamily housing in this particular instance, what is happening right now is intentional. That decisions are being made that are very intentional, that really mirror what Donald Trump was doing in the 90s with his housing in New York. It's time to call a thing, and how race and racialization is being rearticulated and reinforced and reinscribed through public policies, how institutions are being manipulated to achieve racist objectives. And effectively what is happening here, right, particularly if you go back again and watch that previous mini podcast episode, is that there's if you can manage to get through all these 6 things that I just laid out, that creates now a huge barrier to entry for housing. Oh, yeah, once you get in, you might be exposed to radon, by the way, because we're not going to spend the additional money to make sure that you're safe, because if you're with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, then presumably you don't deserve safety in your home. That is what they are saying here. We have to be very real about what is happening. And let's be clear, there are folks on the other side who voted for this who will be impacted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac because, that is what they qualify in terms of housing, and then they become exposed to this. Here's the thing. Here is my thing. We will hear about this down the road. We will hear 10 years from now, we will hear about this down the road. This will have implications. This will have ramifications because someone who has been appointed to the FHFA said, oh, yeah, we no longer need a test for that. And yes, you could be exposed to this risk inside of your home. We will hear about this years down the line. Mark it. Mark it. We really have to pay attention to what is happening. What this is going to call for is community organizing. For those among us who knows how to work, with these particular radioactive gases, right? That are odorless, that are colorless, and that can help protect people in their homes. The organizer is going to have to start on the ground. It really is. Pay attention to this space. What's happening at the FHFA is very important in terms of the lives of people across this country. This is mind blowing. Stay tuned. This has been this episode of The Breakdown. I'll see you next time. Peace.